Good afternoon, everyone. Um,
I thought I was skip out of this.
it's about 2:35 in Washington, and my name is Joyjit Debroy, and I'm the Executive Vice President for Global Programs here at Winrock. And it is my privilege to welcome all of you who are here in person on this beautiful afternoon, sunny afternoon in Washington, as well as those of you joining us by video on our Teams chat program to talk about the achievements and learnings from the Attaining Lasting Change project, in short, ATLAS, program funded by the Department of Labor. And our colleagues are here from the field, from our country programs in Liberia, in Paraguay, in Argentina, and in Thailand. So I'm very, very excited to have all of you here and on this panel to talk about best practices, lessons learned from these several years of implementation. Winrock has partnered with the Department of Labor for decades now to focus on issues of forced labor, child labor eradication, and human trafficking, combating trafficking as well. Um, Atlas is really the latest example of this important collaboration. And I think what you're going to be hearing today, I think will demonstrate that this work takes a tremendous amount of effort and investments into this work, building up the capacity of our partners. This specific project was focused on building up government capacity at a local, state level, as well as a central level. But we have colleagues here who've clearly participated across a variety of investments that have been made over the years to fight the issues around child labor eradication, forced labor eradication. We are also working across similar programs that are funded by other US government agencies, the State Department, USAID, and others to address this issue. And as you all might know, Winrock International, since its formation about, you know, goes back more than 50 years, has been committed to working on issues of human rights abuses and empowerment issues, issues around equity and inclusion. And we're really, really privileged to have implemented this program with our partner, the Department of Labor. Several of you are here from there. We appreciate you all. And as our panel will talk about, and Chris will be introducing the program as well, hopefully we will be learning a lot of what has worked, what has not worked, some of the challenges we've faced as well, and how this investment could be carried forward by the Department of Labor to continue to address these issues. So welcome again, and over to you, Chris. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Thank you and good afternoon. It's wonderful to see all of you in person and everyone who's online with us. I also want to thank Georgia and Chris and everyone at Winrock. Georgia, as you said, there's such a long history of the U.S. Department of Labor and Winrock working together on these issues. So we thank you for your commitment, for your partnership. I'm also thrilled to see colleagues from around the world, old friends and new. This project is so important because of the way it is focusing on one of the greatest needs we have, which is we need to ensure that we have laws in countries that will ensure that children and adult workers aren't exploited. And we know right now that we have new global estimates from the ILO on child labor, which show that for the first time in 20 years, the trend is reversed. We saw child labor reduced for 16 years, but now we've seen it increase. The forced labor estimates, which were recently released as well, Those are again showing that forced labor is on the rise. And that's not for the lack of effort from so many committed groups, but these are the realities we're facing. And as we're looking at that, that just speaks to us about why we need to find new tools, new ways to partner with countries on the ground, which I think is what we're going to hear about today. Also wanted to take a look at the Sustainable Development Goals. We know Target 8.7 has goals for eliminating child labor and forced labor. And these deadlines are coming up very quickly. In order for us to make meaningful progress, and I think that's where we need to focus, is realizing that we want to reverse these trends, then we have to be not only undertaking pilot efforts, which just to say that we know these projects, as you were saying, Georgia, we're testing methodologies. From the U.S. Department of Labor, we see it as an opportunity to identify areas of need and then to reach out, partner with experts, and to work in countries and to try to show what can be effective. But today's so important because we need to hear what's happening on the ground, to ask all of you the tough questions about what has been working, what you think could be better. Because without learning in that way, we're not going to be real to what's happening on the ground. And that's the only way we're going to see those figures coming down. I also want to point out, and I have some colleagues in the room from our Research and Policy Division at the U.S. Department of Labor's Office of Child Labor, Forced Labor, and Human Trafficking. And we just released our flagship reports on child labor and forced labor. Those were released yesterday. That's reporting on more than 130 countries around the world. It's looking at the scope, the nature of the problem of child labor, and our lists are looking at forced labor. We're also including information on laws, where we stand, and where we stand on enforcement, as well as social protection. And there are recommendations in those reports. But for those reports to mean something, and I'm sure my colleagues would agree, we need people to read those reports, and then we need partners in country with the capacity to work on those issues. So I just want to again thank Winrock for having us here today, for being such a great partner for decades, and for the experts on the panel, and really excited to hear questions from those online and in the room. And I hope that we'll all learn a great deal. So thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Georgette. My name is Chris Woolley, and I'm the project director for the Atlas Project with Winrock International, based here in our Arlington, Virginia office. And before we get started with our panel discussion and hearing from our colleagues in the field, I'd like to provide you all a brief overview of the Atlas Project, what we've accomplished, and what the goals are. So give me just 1 minute. I can bring that up and set that up. Does that look good online?
Yeah.
Great. So the Atlas Project, as you already know, is funded by the U.S. Department of Labor. This is a project that began in 2019 and is scheduled to end at the end of March of next year. So we've already gone through over 3.5 years of implementation, and we're coming into the final months. This is implemented primarily by Winrock International as the prime, well, not primarily, but Winrock International as the prime in consortium with 3 other local organizations. We work with Lawyers Without Borders, which is based here in the U.S. We work with Partners of the Americas, based in Paraguay, and we work with Desarrollo y Alta Gestión, which is based in Argentina. The Atlas Project is a global project that works in 4 countries. We're working in Thailand, Liberia, Paraguay, and Argentina. And we're working to strengthen the capacity of governments to address 3 crimes: child labor, forced labor, and human trafficking. So while there are some projects that work on child labor, some projects that work on human trafficking, the Atlas Project focuses on all 3. And we do so through 3 components. We look to improve legal frameworks. These are the laws and regulations that govern child labor, forced labor, and human trafficking. We work to strengthen the enforcement of those laws, and we work to strengthen coordination between actors between government actors to address child labor, forced labor, and human trafficking. The Atlas Project has a series of tailored activities for each country. There are 18 sets of activities, and these include a broad range of interventions. These include trainings, technical assistance. They include the development of manuals and guides and policies, and they include the creation of coordination platforms and mechanisms. And our guests today will go into greater depth about these a little bit later on. But these are activities that are really tailored to the needs of each country. And throughout the project, we engage a broad range of government actors. We engage enforcement actors like judges, policemen, prosecutors. We engage, of course, the Ministry of Labor, the Ministry of Justice, but we also engage local level actors at the subnational level. And we also engage a lot of frontline workers as well. And our panelists will be speaking a bit more about that engagement. What's key to know about the Atlas Project is that the Atlas Project is following a 9-step strategy for implementing activities. That begins with research, continues on to identification of activities based on that research, the development and pilot of those activities, the refinement of those activities, and then finally institutionalization of those activities, which is the end goal of the product. We want any product or tool developed by the Atlas Project to be institutionalized and continued for use with the government after the end of the project. And so why have we followed this 9-step model? Well, first, it provides a common framework that's adaptable across countries, so that this model provides us a common way to speak about the activities and speak about our progress across all 4 countries. It also is set up to engage government stakeholders throughout. Through our project, government stakeholders advise on the needs. They help select the activities. They receive the pilot. They tell us how to refine the pilot. So they're engaged at every step of the process. It also ensures that all the decisions we make are based on data and evidence. We choose our activities based on data and evidence from our research. We refine our activities based on data and evidence from the pilot stage. So all of our steps are based on data and evidence. And finally, it's a way to ensure long-term sustainability and long-term capacity of government agencies. We don't want government agencies to fall back to their baseline level after the project ends. So our project is set up to make sure that the activities that we're implementing, the impact that we're implementing, can be institutionalized and sustained beyond the project. So with that, we've had some wonderful results that I'll allow our team members to speak a little more about, but I've highlighted, in Thailand, we're seeing that new agencies are involved in enforcing child labor and forced labor laws like never before, and that's a result of the project. We're seeing that the government has adopted protocols and manuals to improve their response to child labor, forced labor, and human trafficking. And we're really seeing that the police have already improved their investigation practices as a result of this project. And we know that from the discussions and interviews we've had with policemen to document their changes in behavior. In Paraguay, we've had similar success where we have police and justice sector training schools implementing our trainings and our modules for staff members and committed to doing that in the long term. We also have achieved that a new victims protection unit will be established in Paraguay to help assist victims of crimes.
Can you expand this? People online can it's very small for them.
I'm so sorry.
If you do the slideshow.
Or slideshow.
Yeah.
I did not realize that was happening. Is this better?
It's better.
No.
Google online.
No, that's actually worse. Yeah, right there. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
right. Okay, perfect. Thank
I
you.
apologize for everyone online who's struggling with that. And in Paraguay, we've also established human trafficking commissions at the subnational level that will outlast the project. In Liberia, we've had wonderful success. Thanks to the project, Liberia has approved a light work list and a hazardous work list to govern child labor in the country. It's a major success from Winrock efforts dating back various years. And the project has also contributed to a new human trafficking law that was passed last year. And we've been vital in helping to provide assistance on a new child labor law that's hopefully going to be passed through the legislature. And finally, I'd highlight that in Argentina, we've had wonderful success updating government training curricula with our materials and making sure that they can properly address child labor, forced labor, and human trafficking. And we've seen already new and increased coordination among the government at local levels. So what's next? Well, activities in Paraguay and Thailand have closed down for the Atlas Project, and we are closing down the Liberia and Argentina activities as well by the end of December. So right now we're in a stage of pause and reflect where we're gathering best practices and lessons learned about how can we improve future projects, how can we improve this DMOP strategy in the future for future iterations and future projects. And we'll be conducting a final evaluation of the Atlas project in these 5 months. So with that, I'd like to turn you over to our moderator for panel events. I'd like to present Charles Cross, also by McKee. Charles is International Relations Specialist with the Department of Labor and is the grants officer representative for the Atlas project. So he's quite familiar with the work and with our guest today. Thank you so much.
Can I get one of these mics over here? Is this thing on? Can everyone hear me okay?
Hold it down for 2 seconds.
Okay, thank you so much to Chris and to Kevin for those initial comments. Hi everyone, my name is McKee Cross and I've been overseeing this project in the Department of Labor side for about a year and a half, 2 years now. I'm going to begin by quickly just introducing our different panelists. So let's begin at the end and work our way down.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jirapon Supa. You can call me Phi, and I'm a country program manager for Atlas Thailand.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Maro Guerrero. I am the director of DYA in the office in Argentina.
Good afternoon. I'm Marta Benitez. I'm the M&E analyst from the Atlas team in Paraguay.
Good afternoon. I am James Yeke from Liberia. I'm the program manager for Atlas Liberia.
Okay, and thank you all. So I think I'd like to begin by just referencing Kevin's initial comments about how the recent global estimates show actually an increase in child labor and an increase in forced labor. Against that kind of background context, maybe we should showcase some different activities of this project that it's implemented across its 4 different implementation countries. And so my question is just, given this background, could you talk, each of you, about one standout activity in your country of implementation?
We'll start at the end. Okay, so I like to share the project success in Thailand. First of all, we conduct a series of training, which we call the training program as an enforcement training program. Enforcement training program is a standardized curricula that gather the international best practice and international standards in enforcing the relevant law. So the enforcement training program, in short, we call it ETP throughout our project implementation, covered 5 modules, which is identification, investigation, referral, prosecution, and sentencing. If you look at the name of the modules, you will see that it covers all the enforcement and justice system, from the police officer, frontline practitioner, up to the judges. In Thailand, as a result of the training program that we delivered to the Department of Provincial Administration, it turned out that the trained officer, were able to intercept the first case in Thailand, a case of forced labor, which is a project success that the Department of Provincial Administration under the Ministry of Interior has shared with us. They expressed their gratitude and they thank that sincere thanks for that, because of the training program that we provide. They were able to differentiate between the element of crimes between the human trafficking and forced labor according to Thai legal framework and laws. And also for the Department of Labor Protection and Welfare, we work with the labor inspector and legal officers as well. So they share with us the success that they were able to gather the witness and evidence, and then build up a case. The first case in Thailand as well, a case of child labor, and now the case is in the court, in the trial. I pass to Maro.
Thank you, Phi. I would like to highlight a success that maybe is related with what Kevin said. Um, because we are working in a very innovative way, we develop planning methodology for the local level that I think that it's a key on how to address the problem of child labor and human trafficking where it happens, that is in the field with the local authorities. So what we did was to develop a planning methodology together with the Ministry of Labor that is in the provincial level and with the municipalities that are at the local level, and also including the voice of the potential victims, people from the community, to understand which were their problems and needs. And we conducted the whole process of local planning together with the ministries and municipalities. So it was the diagnosis through a cartography methodology, and also planning a project together with the community and the authorities, and implementing the project. And it was very interesting that this address an opportunity that we found, that was that the Ministry of Labor and the municipality had a budget, but they couldn't allocate this budget in the municipalities because they don't have a plan. They don't have a methodology on how to plan. So we systematize all the process as a methodology, and we develop a planning manual for officers. And we included this as a material of a diploma course that is another theme of the project. And we included this module, this cartography module, as a material in the diploma course. And this diploma course is reaching more than 300 people from the local governments. So I would like to highlight that it has been very important also to work with the training programs of the government. It is not only is not the only experience to have included this material in the diploma course, but we did it with other training programs from the government, such as the a training program of the police university that is part of the Ministry of Justice, and a couple of programs of different levels of the government that have training areas inside the ministries.
Okay, so I would like to share two unique activities that were carried out in the Paraguayan experience from the project. The first one is the mood court competition. The mood court competition was aimed at officials from the technical teams of judges, prosecutors, and public defenders, the main institutions from the justice system. This mock trial competition was an innovative way to enhance skill building and enhance capacity within these institutions. So it was the first time it was aimed at officials, and it had a very great impact within the different levels of the justice system. It was proven to be effective, and it provided understanding on these issues of child labor, forced labor, and human trafficking. And uh, these officials that participated as competitors also involved participation from judges, prosecutors, and public defenders as tutors, and also as the qualifying courts. So it had very good results in the project. Also, I would like to mention the Living Lab. The Living Lab is a laboratory with based on a participatory approach, in which experts from the different institutions from the justice system, that is the Supreme Court of Justice, the Public Ministry, the Ministry of Public Defense, and the Ministry of Labor, were convened in order to analyze the topic on compensation to victims of child labor, forced labor, and human trafficking. It was interesting in the sense that it was never done before. And so they analyzed the legal framework and the international framework, and got to some very interesting findings, recommendations, and best practices in order to address the gaps in compensation. And as a result, we had some outcomes that I would like to mention. For example, a creation of a specialized unit within the Ministry of Public Defense, especially for victims. Also, within the public ministry, they have new guidelines in order to quantify or estimate the compensation for victims. So we thought that the process was proven to be effective as well. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. I am James from Liberia. And for us in Liberia, we have two key outcomes of the project. We have legal reform and that of enforcement, improving enforcement. So for the purpose of this discussion, we will take one activity under each outcome and just give you a snapshot. And for outcome one, we advocated with the government for legal reform on child labor, forced labor, and human trafficking. And this effort was not only done by the project, but it was done by the project stakeholders and also a special group we call the Legislative Reform Committee. And our effort did not go in vain. We have some successes because through our effort, the government was able to endorse the hazardous and alert workplace for Liberia to protect children. This is an effort that we have fought from past two projects now did not work, but I think at this time, Atlas Advocacy along with partners made it to work. Then the next one is right now, through our advocacy, Liberia have drafted an exclusive child labor law that is right now before the legislature for enactment. And also, it also supported our effort. Window opportunity was open for Atlas to have a significant input in the newly enacted human trafficking law in Liberia, 2021. Then under the outcome two, we were also privileged to provide training for law enforcement officer. And when we say law enforcement officer, we are referring to the police, the immigration, the DEA, that is the Liberian Drugs Enforcement Agencies, judges, prosecutors, and civil society organization under the ETP program. And this program is meant to build the capacity of these people, because if we are talking about legal reform, we also should talk about increasing knowledge, that we build the capacity of actors to act. And so we make sure that those training were given, and it benefited at most 85 beneficiaries for now, and they are using the training to ensure that they do their work as it relates to child labor, forced labor, and human trafficking.
Yeah, so thank you all for your answers to that question. I think across your four answers, I counted at least 10 specific government entities that you all referred to, probably over 15 as well. So I think one of the things that highlights the role that this project has played in sustained, purposeful efforts to deal with foreign government entities and raise their capacity to address these issues. Could you talk a little bit about how you identify certain champions and advocates within foreign government entities for you to work with and push your work forward?
First.
Okay, that's good. For Liberia, it was a sample issue because what we did is, we are talking about the pre-situation analysis. And when you do pre-situation analysis, we found out that in the report and also the findings and the validation, there was institutional mapping that was done, and research was also carried out. And that was also followed by meetings, because if that is consultative meeting with the Ministry of Labor, because if you are talking about child labor, human trafficking, and forced labor, they fall under the canopy of the Ministry of Labor. So if you have to form a group or a stakeholder that will be working with you to make a reality of that project, you have to have consultative meeting with the Ministry of Labor, because Ministry of Labor has what we call National Commission on Child Labor. And so through those meetings, consultative meetings, we were able to select our partners, our key stakeholders, and also write letter to their heads, informing them of their participation.
I think that the most interesting thing of the Atlas project is that it has these participatory methodologies. So since the beginning, we identified through the different research studies, the stakeholders, actors mapping, PSA, but we start defining with them or finding the gaps and designing the activities we will perform with them. And during the whole process, we become like one team. No, we work together developing the solutions, tasting the solutions, piloting, and evaluating. So at the end of the process, we got the buy-in of the activities. But in addition, I think that it's very important, and we did it in Argentina, is to sign formal agreements, to commit them with the whole process, because it's a demanding process. They have to be engaged, interested, and committed.
Okay, thank you both for your answers to that. I think, if we're talking about how to identify government champions for your work, what we're really talking about is your project's sustainability strategy, right? When we're thinking about who you can work with in government that will help institutionalize these different interventions that the project is trying to affect. Could you talk a little bit about how the sustainability strategy of the project varies between your different countries and the different activities that you're implementing? Talk about what you're doing to make the effect of the project sustainable after the end of the project.
Yeah, so let me begin. So the project is geared toward the institutionalization. So beginning to work with it for the institutionalization since the beginning of each project. So working jointly with these institutions in order to ensure that the plans are included within the institutions. So in that sense, for example, Paraguay drafted some plans for sustainability and worked along in order to design or adapt, for example, training programs within institutions. In the case of the Ministry of Labor, for example, we didn't work with their training center because they don't have currently a training center. And that's a difference from the other institutions. So we worked in order to install a unit within their institution in order to install the training programs adjusted to their needs through the training of trainers for officials of the Ministry of Labor. Also, regarding the communication materials that were developed under the framework of the project as a cross-cutting strategy, and also to support the other DMOPs, we drafted a guide that was delivered to these institutions on how to use these materials in the future, how to use them in order to ensure the implementation or the re-implementation of these products that were developed and delivered. And those are the ones I can think about. Who would like to do it? Yes,
Okay. For Thailand's experience, as I mentioned earlier, that we have the ETP as a part of program delivery. So we ensure to work with the training division of each government agency participated in the project. And we as a part of an institutionalization plan, we make sure that these ETP and topics of child labor and forced labor are integrated to their division or their agency curricula. And another way is that to ensure the sustainability of this training program delivery is that a creation of a trainer pool within each government agency, so that they have the trainer at that agency, an expert on the topic that can, transfer knowledge to their peers and colleagues. Another key activity or outputs or the big that lead to the big outcome of Thailand, at last Thailand that I like to highlight is that um, through the project strategy, we managed to provide technical assistance to the Thai government, and we supported the Office of Attorney General and the other 11 government agency in development of the practitioner guide on investigations of child labor and forced labor cases, which is the first guide in Thailand. And it's to ensure the sustainability. The government has decided to integrate this as a guide and a tool into the national policy to combat trafficking in persons and forced labor.
Okay, for sustainability, for us, we feel that sustainability of our activities of a project is not only from the beginning or to the end, it's throughout the project. And it means that you have to self-evaluate yourself as you are, implementing a project. So for the initial stage, because we want sustainability at the end, we make sure we sign MOU with the ministry, the government, to promise to say, yes, all the activities you're going to at the end, we will take over. And after that, then we begin to engage not only the Ministry of Labor, but all line ministries and stakeholders with constant consultative workshop, making sure we have constant consultative meetings, and also provide, the kind of information communication to them concerning the limitation of the project, because that is one thing that you have to understand, because if you don't understand, the expectation of people begin to increase, especially the government. So going through that, we make sure that those premises were laid first, and with our constant engagement with them in our workshops, in our meetings. And besides that, to make sure that this thing is sustained, the activities are sustained. The drug human trafficking law, and that of the endorsement of the light work and the hazardous work list, and the current drafted, child exclusively child labor law. These are documents. These are policy documents that can also hold government to making sure that they make sure that our activities are continuing when we are not there. And this one is done through our meetings and their engagement, because the development of all these things are part and parcel of our joint working together with the government. We are, like I said previously in other presentation, we don't do parallel program. We do program that is coordinating with government will and also the will of our donor. So these things are discussed before we start the project. That's how we did it.
Very good. And in your work to strengthen government capacity, what are some of the challenges that you all have faced? And what were some steps that you took to overcome those challenges to build foreign government capacity?
Well, working with the government, it's challenging over everything in our countries when we face elections and the turnover of officers very frequently. In Argentina, we had twice movements, every 2 years. So we made different strategies. First, with the politicians, we got public agreements, knowing that maybe they will change. So we focus. The second strategy was to focus our efforts on the technicians, the technical levels. And the third, maybe, was to be as civil society organizations in the transitions. I think that's very important, especially in the electoral years or processes to, I don't know in English, accompany,
Company.
to accompany the technicians to keep the processes going on.
For Paraguay, COVID definitely was a challenge for implementation. So during the first part of implementation in Paraguay, we had to implement the pilot phase, and we had to carry out trainings within the enforcement training program. So what we did was we had to adapt to these times and carry out trainings in virtual sessions through the Zoom platforms. We had to come up with some creative tools in order to gather data for M&E purposes, for evaluation as well. And also what we did was that was at the central level, and at the territorial level, we had to provide technical assistance in order to reactivate the departmental commissions on human trafficking. So we had virtual meetings in order to complete that process before the implementation of activities at the territorial level. So it's like we had to adapt to those times and consider that after that we could maybe carry out our activities in person. But we really had some interesting results from that implementation. We, for example, had participants from all over the country in our virtual session. So for us, that was very positive, considering trainings are always aimed more at the central level and do not include the local level. So it was positive as well.
Okay, and I think the last of our pre-prepared questions here, what other best practices would you recommend to other projects that are trying to attempt this type of action?
Well, this is the best practice I love the most because it's very simple but very complicated, and it's hearing the local voices, the victims' voices. Because sometimes when we are designing the big public policy, we forget for whom is this policy. So we conducted many studies, consultation studies, trying to understand the problem from the perspective of the victims. Trying to understand which were the gaps, because we realized that in Argentina, there are many laws, policies, and many programs, but they didn't come to the field. So there was a gap among these two levels, and we understood through consulting women of a municipality why. So and we was important to include the supply chain perspective, because we worked in the garment sector specifically, and we realized through the research studies that there were many migrants, women migrants from Peru and Bolivia, that were the ones that were working in these informal sweatshops, and that they faced problems that could be solved, and there were programs to solve these problems, such as having ID, for example, to access the services of the Argentinian government. So at the level of research, it was very important to understand. And after that, the social cartography that I described before allowed us to design together with them the solutions, because the solutions were for they. So we designed the solutions, and also to implement and develop methodologies with the participation of the people. For example, we designed together with the municipality and the Ministry of Labor 3 kinds of solutions. One of them was awareness raising materials in their own languages and using their own means of communication, such as the local radios. The other project was social care services, because this was the main problem of the Bolivian women. They didn't have a place to leave their kids while they work. They had 2 problems. They didn't have daycare centers, and also they work a lot of time in informal workshops. So we were addressing two problems: forced labor and child labor with a service that was developed with them. And also we developed together with the municipality and the ministry programs of decent work. Well, the Ministry of Labor had these programs, but where these programs didn't ask the needs of the potential victims. So for us, this is a very simple but a big good practice. Someone else? Sorry for the time.
I'm here. Okay, thank you very much. For us in Liberia, I think we feel that the best practices that we can present right here is, we said that we are recommending that to improve enforcement, you need to work with community and grassroots to to increase referral. So if you are talking about improving enforcement, and you are leaving out the people who you are doing the work for, then you are making a serious mistake, because from past experience, it's like international NGOs, when they get into the developing country to implement, they mostly send to the capital and they don't go down deep to the people. And the people for whom you are implementing are the people who are at the community level. So if you want to improve enforcement, because the more referral you get from the community coming up to the national level. And that's why, in fact, in our own program for our CLMS SOPs, we have set a monitoring committee at the community level, district level, county level, before it goes to the national level. So it means that, again, bless us that the Minister of Gender has set up a structure in all of the major, cities in Liberia, where we call the Child Welfare Committee. And this committee is heading the monitoring of child labor, forced labor, and human trafficking in those communities. So leaving out the community, only working with the national government, yes, it glitters, but it's not gold, because you are only investing in people who might be turned over tomorrow. So it's better to go down to the community, to work with the community, providing training and awareness to making sure that referral is increased at the district national level, so that enforcement can improve. That's what we do.
As a best practice, Paraguay would recommend the awareness raising actions before carrying out the coordination. That is to lay the basis in the concepts. People usually are not familiar with these issues that are very complex. And in order to enhance the coordination and to make it fruitful, they first need to understand the concept. So we recommend awareness raising actions prior to the coordination.
Okay, last but not least, for the government's capacity strengthening program, we would recommend to ensure the government stakeholders' sense of ownership at the beginning of the projects. The nice step model that Chris highlight during his presentation is a good approach, because the project started with the evidence-based research that identified the needs and gaps within the governments. And after that, we conduct the stakeholder consultation. They help select the key activities that they would like to participate in. And throughout the 9-step model, or so-called DMOP process, the government stakeholder provide feedback and recommendations, and at the end they take on all the project outputs or products to be part of their work or their institutions, which is the institutionalization process completed. And thank you very much.
Great. I think that covers everyone. And so we're going to open it up for a Q&A to the room first, I believe, and then take questions from the chat if there's any left over. So I think go ahead and raise your hands in the room and I'll come over and bring you the mic.
Hi there. I actually have a question for you as well. When you were talking before about creating a sense of ownership within the government, can you tell me what kind of activities specifically helped create that ownership, whether it be just the discussions in general or how you kind of built that?
Right. To roll out the project, I would say we have, as I mentioned, the project stakeholder and get consultation workshop where we brought together all the government stakeholder after we conduct the stakeholder mapping to come together and then provide a feedback and recommendation based on the pre-situational analysis, which identify needs and gaps within the governments in enforcing the relevant laws on child labor and forced labor. Throughout the project implementation, it is very important and necessary to maintain regular contact with the government focal point, also called champion. It's just a process that naturally happened because we work closely, and then those officials are committed to the project and expect the output and the product of the project, and at the end they become the champion, the so-called champion of the project. Another approach for the practitioner guys specifically, we established the technical committee, but it's through the coordination of Office of Attorney General to facilitate to bring all the government stakeholder together. I think this is a sense of ownership instilled in there within the Office of Attorney General and also the other government agency involved, because without this facilitation, it could be very challenging bringing all the government stakeholders, including the Ministry of Tourism and Sport, to address the child labor in Thai boxing sector to come and then address the issue. I hope I answer your question.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you feel like, I guess for the other guest panelists as well, do you feel like that was a standardized process throughout all of the projects, or was there any variations that you might have had?
It was. It was because this is the methodology of the Atlas project to research before with the governmental agencies and to decide with them which are the team ups coming from the needs that we should address. And that's the parting point to start working together with the ministry. And I think that in the case of Argentina, the government is always addressing emergencies. So this has been an opportunity to stop and design strategies that they need, but they don't have the opportunity to conduct. They don't have time.
Yes, I think for Paraguay also this was the case. Like when they provide feedback after project activities, we have the chance to redesign and use their feedback in order to implement new activities and make them feel part of the process as well.
I'd like to add to that. We found out during this 3-day discussion that because of the process of piloting and then we take the feedback and recommendation from them, that also induced a sense of ownership because they felt that the feedback and recommendation provided throughout through the process really taken into consideration and improve the activity or the program that we deliver to them.
Yeah, for the Labiva program, it's no different from the other countries. But what we do in Liberia is the first thing was before you start the project, you have to make sure you have an inception meeting. Inception meetings with people that you are going to work with, line ministries, government, and even people who are going to be beneficiaries. But the process explained by Argentina and Paraguay is no different from what we did in Liberia. It's the engagement of the people to be involved, because to gain the level of government involvement is not a mushroom growth. It's not an event, it's a process, and that process should be followed before you come to it. Thank you.
Just want to add that this is not a package. So what is interesting, and that's why we have different DMOPs in every country. No, we have coincidences, but every government decided what do they need. No.
Thank you all. Next question.
James Foster from International Justice Mission. Thank you to all the panelists. This question, I guess, is for all of you. I'm curious from an accountability perspective. Who were the individuals most likely to be prosecuted as perpetrators? So what level did you all see throughout the life cycle of the project? People being held accountable through enforcement. Who were those people? Or another way to frame the question is sort of how far down in the supply chain were the individuals who were being held accountable? Was it recruiters, ship captains, factory owners? Just curious about that.
I think for us in Liberia, if we talk about trafficking, we have the internal trafficking that is wrapping more than international trafficking. Because if you talk about internal trafficking, you are talking about somebody taking somebody from the village to the urban area with an intended purpose of sending them to school, but instead they are converted to become street sellers or, servitude in a home. So that is very common in our country. By the time the law was passed, in fact, this law that just passed recently, 2021, people have been prosecuted, and the Liberian government has been very serious on the report from tier 2 coming down to tier 2. It was a concern by the government, and so they make sure that the law was reformed and acted on as quick as possible, and that was done. Right now, Liberia has one of the big stringent punishment when it comes to trafficking. If you are found guilty, it's not less than 20 years. So people will say that was too ambitious, but they are trying to make sure that to set precedents. Because this law reform we are referring to, if you look at the old laws, somebody violating child labor issues or trafficking issue, maybe they are charged $1.50. That is not deterrent to anybody to stop. So it means that they have to make the punishment a little bit, heavy and weight so that people can respect. So yes, people have been really prosecuted in Liberia when it comes to human trafficking, and right now they are behind bars.
So, well, the information that we have so far is that the perpetrator could be the employer who owns the premises, the company that the fraud has been investigated. And there's a case of forced labor that is the person who tried to lure the victim and then exploit them for labor.
Thank you for that. And next question I see here at the front.
Hi, thank you very much for that and for all the experiences that you are bringing to this room. My question is related really to the resistance you presumably faced as you were operationalizing your DMOP. I am curious in each country where the resistance was most strongest. Was it ministries? Was it the Justice Department? Was it the police? Was it any other actors that I haven't mentioned? Was it the community? Because to actually take on some of this work implies you have to acknowledge you have a problem, and sometimes that's an issue internally. So I'd be curious in each country what the experience was with where the most resistance was available, or whatever the verb is.
Okay, so we had some resistance when we wanted to implement training activities within the justice system some institutions are special in the sense that they won't be trained with other institutions because they think they are above others. So, for example, prosecutors, they want training, but specialist training on specific subjects. So they won't want to be trained with the police, for example. So after trying to adapt to their needs, we held trainings aimed specifically for them, but it was hard, like having trainings with different institutions, but they still participated, for example, as lecturers or as teachers. So we were able to overcome that as well.
I will. I remember a couple of resistances. First of all, at the local level, when we tried to research about the victim situations, the victim situation, they were like aware of who are you, why are you asking me, no? So we organized our team. We hired people from the local level to conduct the research. And also we work with the municipality that has contact with the local organizations. And I will say also that we experienced some resistance with the protection system because similar as Paraguay, they told us that everything was fine, that they coordinate, that they have services working. But when we started working at the local level, they engaged with this concrete experience, no, and they feel that they could provide some support for other institutions, for example.
Yeah, I think it would be fair to me if I don't tell you exactly what is happening in Liberia. And what is happening in Liberia is you will find that people are not resilient. They are not resisting the program. Because in fact, like child labor, forced labor, and human trafficking has been practiced and accepted by the people unconsciously. They didn't know that it was the bad side of it. Like somebody just come and cajole you and take your daughter or your sons away and carry in the city and never to go there and the person is suffering. Sometimes they end over going across the border. And so the way the traffickers behave, and after we carry the training, especially the ETP training at the national level, which of course they are even appealing that it should roll down to the community level because it's where traffickers are going, recruiting people. And once people are not trained and aware of the activities that of what traffickers are involved in, they will always be victimized. So you will see that all our demands, they have been accepted by the people because they consist of training concepts relating to child labor, forced labor, and human trafficking. And so it is simplified in such a way. Let me just show you something. Where is Alex? Okay, fine. This is just a simple thing that you can look at. That if you go in the community, this is made merely for the community dwellers. It's not for somebody who is in a high school or we see that you use this as a facilitator and ask villagers to tell you which one of this is good, which one of this is bad. And they will tell you. And your question, your facilitation guide is right behind here. A secret document that you're not going to show to students. And you stay and ask and they show you. So that shows to you that what we do is the people in the community are very, accepting to what we are doing. And so they are not really resistant to what we are doing. They are only asking for the extension. So for the extension, for example, right now, what the Liberian government is doing, the minister is trying to have a regional TRP, commission for the Mano River country. That is Liberia, Sierra Leone, or Guinea, and that of Ivory Coast. So I think it's like the extension of the program by extent to other countries.
in collaboration. We can region. And when it is regional, it might go to West Africa. From West Africa, it might go to the whole Africa. From the whole Africa, it go to Asia. From there to the whole world. So it means that it's a kind of a process. It is not an event, like I said, but it should be step by step. So that's how it is like.
We have any other questions from the room?
Oh, you want to hear?
I want to hear the Thailand
Oh,
version
yeah.
of the story. Sorry.
So, I think it's the one and the only resistance that we witnessed throughout the project life cycle is that is a resistance from a one community that we target to conduct the outreach campaign to raise awareness on child labor and forced labor. We did that at the fishery village, whereby all the fishermen and fisherwomen came and gathered, and then they just like the first question they asked, "Why are you here? We don't have the issue of child labor and human trafficking."
Human trafficking, yeah.
Yeah, and then they just like they kind of resist of the activity, but at the end we were able to engage with them, and uh, we 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 hosted the outreach campaign with them, and then at the end they just had a chance to sit down and talk with the labor legal officer, because there was a case and there was the 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 people in the community were not happy with the case, because it's a case of a child in appear to be in a fishing boats in the early morning, which is illegal according to Thai law to have anyone younger less than 18 years old be on a fishing boat or fishing vessel at that certain time of the day, which is about 5 a.m. And yeah, it was a big pushback. But then on positive lights, it's good. It was a good thing that that outreach campaign or activity that we conducted with the people in the community just bridged the gap and the disputes between the provincial labor office, because there's a person from the central office as well to explain the law. At the same time, people understand more that they shouldn't engage anyone younger than less than 18 years old on the on the fishing vessels of small boats, even or even at the area of the seafood processing.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I think, and thank you so much for that. I think those are our questions from the room. Should we check the questions from the chat and see what we've had online? Do we have
So we
someone?
do have one question.
You want to read it?
Yeah, I'll read that out. Sorry. Okay, this is for Argentina. The question is, did you see a big difference in understanding between regional and federal labor authorities in Argentina? And are there any sector-specific findings?
Difference between
Big difference in understanding. And I don't know, maybe the person in chat wants to specify what kind of understanding, but I guess just general understanding of the issues.
understanding of the issues.
Yes, maybe the regional level, the provincial level is more informed. They are trained, they receive training courses, and the local level have never heard about it. So that was the point. We developed these training programs, thinking on the local level too, and to reach those people that is never trained, and that that implies to develop specific materials, for example, printed materials for people that doesn't have a computer or that doesn't have any information about the topic.
Great, thank you. Oh, we have another question in the room.
Hi, this is Emily Romero from Grameen Foundation, and I'm wanted to ask Mauro about your comment about the CSOs, working with them in between election cycles or when there was turnover in the government. So I wondered if there were any other examples where CSOs or non-governmental organizations had a role to play in any of the countries of the project.
For examples
of where CSOs or NGOs that you engaged them through the project, or did they play any other role in the success of the program? This could be for any country, I guess.
Sorry?
It could be for Argentina or any of the other countries.
We engage other NGOs at the provincial level and also at the local level. And we think that they are very important in the elections transitions to keep the memory of the processes. So we include them in the training courses also and in the planning process, such as the cartography. That was the question. I'm not sure if I understood.
I think similarly in Liberia we did, because right now we have the champion, and the champions are the working group, and it's not only government entity, I mean ministries that are selected, like we said, from the PSA, and also with consultative meeting with the Ministry of Labor that has the National Commission on Child Labor, can also tell you that this partner has hands in child protection or in making sure that it can be supportive. So right now we work with ADLO, we work with World Hope International, and other CSOs, also make up our working group. So we can be two me. We got to also make sure we work with our sister organization.
Should we have another question from the chat?
Yeah, we do have one more question here. The question is, or comment is, grateful if you could clarify how many companies and individuals were or are being prosecuted. And I guess to that first, I would just kind of clarify that, Atlas is really focused at like the government capacity increasing level. So weren't involved in directly facilitating any kind of prosecution of any of the crimes of child labor, forced labor, or human trafficking. But if any of the panelists have ideas or estimates or could speak to that.
I don't know in terms of numbers, but I would like to share that we found something that we are working in Atlas as a perspective and a possibility, an opportunity, and is that we found that two important institutions that have to have information about the victims, they don't have good systems to keep the information or to keep track the cases. So for the future, it will be a good practice or maybe a new DMOP to develop these information systems and maybe it's a good practice for coordination also, because some of the institutions have their own I don't think I can't say systems because it sometimes are drive places to keep the information. So I think that it will be important to have system to track the data and also mechanisms to share information among entities or among systems.
Great, thank you. Next question from the chat. Is there an example of a best practice that includes a private sector partnership?
Sure, I can see the faces on our panelists. I just want to jump in that the Atlas project is very narrowly focused on government capacity because that's the how it was funded. So it's not a project that engages the private sector to make changes, unless there are examples in the field.
Yeah.
Yes, kind of. Since we are promoting this multi-stakeholders planning, the sectors have been consulted, We are working in the garment sector, so we are not talking about big companies. We interviewed them, the chambers, and we realized that they are very far from the small cooperatives that are informal. No, they can't reach. In Argentina, the big companies, how do you say tercerizar?
Outsource.
Outsource the big brands outsource to they give my English is patrons, los patrones para la costura, the patterns for the small sweatshops. And there's someone in the middle that makes the business, no? So when we interview them about the developing procedures, they said, no, everything is okay because we hire someone and he brings us the clothes. But these clothes are made on these informal sweatshops where many Bolivian and Peruvian women work a lot of time, 20 hours a day. So we think it's a gap, and it's important to engage these big companies in order to reach the whole supply chain to change things. No, so we involve these sweatshops that are part of the supply chain, are kind of companies, informal companies, but not the whole chain. No, but they are involved designing the solutions.
Great, thank you. Next question from the chat, unless we have any in the room that I missed. Okay, no. Okay, so as the Atlas project was focused on governments, was there work to support government departments and offices to create and enforce law and/or regulations of corporate governance around the treatment of labor?
Say it again.
Yeah, sorry. Was there any work to support the government in either creating or enforcing laws around corporate governance?
It's up to the government. Yeah, it's really. Corporate governance. Yeah. It's up. Oh, I can take that. I think it's up to the governments and and each country national policy for that.
Let me just say something.
I think for that question, we are more focused as a project. We are focused on child labor, forced labor, and human trafficking, focusing on children. And I don't think we should be also intruding in the labor law of the country, because that is, if it comes to child labor, yes. When it comes to forced labor and human trafficking relating to children, yes. I think that's the focus of our project. I don't think we are there to revise or refine, labor laws.
Hi again. I just wanted to kind of get a gauge and this is for all the panelists as well. Just out of curiosity, what were the goods, sectors, or services that you found child labor and forced labor most prevalent in the countries that you're working in?
As in everywhere, in agriculture, in Argentina, in agriculture, also in trash dams, fishing. I think that are the most important. I'm forgetting something, Florencia, in Argentina? No, agriculture.
No, pero urbanos también. O sea, está bien. Yo podés agregar el detalle de los carreros, que me parece es algo innovador.
But it's in. Are you referring inside the sector? No. Which sector in general in Argentina?
Yeah, just in general, like a sectoral, if there's specific goods or products as well, just kind of.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a list of products that maybe has child labor. There is in the report, the DOL report, but over everything in agriculture, the brick sector, and trash dumps and fishing. Yeah.
Nobody is. For child labor, I was going to mention in Paraguay, they are involved in brick making, for example. That's one that we can. Child labor, street vending, for example, sugar cane.
For child labor in Liberia is prevalent all over the sectors, especially agriculture. And if you look at the rubber plantations, you look at the palm plantations, because we have huge plantation of palm and that of rubber in Liberia. But with the enforcement and also the resilience of government and other partners, especially for Firestone. Firestone, I'm a victim of child labor in Firestone when I was small. But now I'm surprised if any I pass through Firestone, I don't see children again involved in those kind of activities. When my father worked with Firestone, I was there at the age of 8, 9, 10, tapping rubber. And but now it's not happening. Yes, it happened, but it happened at a low scale in small farmers, areas where the government is not really focusing. They are only focusing on the big plantations. So the big plantations are more careful. And also the trade union, the workers union in their CBL, that is their bargaining, agreement. They talk about child labor this time, and that was done during the ASH project when we push this with the trade union. That we make sure that when they are signing the bargaining agreement with their companies, they make sure that the child labor is incorporated so that no children should be involved in activities that is not. In fact, what we did under the Clay 2, we almost wanted to have a private partnership with Golden Veranda. And the reason is sometimes they can mean to do it and sometimes they pretend they do not know. Yeah, because you go there and explain to them what is the impact if you use children to produce your rubber. Because there's way that they will not buy your rubber or they will not buy your palm oil. So these things, this education should be given to the big company, but for the small farmers, they don't care. So right now it exists, but it's not existing in the large plantations and the companies, actually.
Me again. I just wanted to add that to touch base in a point, and is that we don't have actual statistics to answer your question. Our last survey on child labor is from 2016. And the problem of this survey is that have information on conglomerados, provinces, groups of provinces, and it says in general in agriculture. So you can't know if it's in grapes or yerba mate, or you don't know numbers exactly. No, it's not updated and is not differentiated by province, neither by product.
Yeah, let me also talk about that. You will see that also in Liberia, we have a very big gap. The gap is the lack of database. Because if you have a database where you are collecting these information, so you have information system set up, I mean, needless to go to Liberia and say, I'm going to do baseline before I can implement this project for child labor. But because it is not available right now, so it becomes, a problem to talk off here to say, oh, this type of child labor is prevalent at this region. It's very difficult. It exists, you see it, but you will not quantify it to give a very clear cut, approach when it comes to information sharing. But yes, we have to make sure that these are gaps in the Liberian, system. The database is not available. And even the laws that we are talking about, the child labor law, the exclusive
child labor law that is being drafted, and our hope is it will be enacted, and that of the human trafficking law that are being enacted already, and also the hazardous and the lead workplace. There is need for us to go out there and carry down to the community the bottom top approach to make sure that these people are, because even the piloting of these documents we were doing, some you will go, the labor commission will tell you, no, I have not seen this one, the handbill. I have not seen this. So it means there is need for dissemination, there is need for awareness and training for these people on these laws.
As well.
Okay, just quickly to answer your question. So in the practitioner guide, we identify the 5 patterns of child labor in Thailand. There's a child labor in general, to use a child to work, or any children under 15 to work, and then any child under 18 to work on a hazardous work, and then child labor in Baker, child labor for online sexual exploitation. That is a new trend that Thailand has nowadays experienced. And it's a big issue, and there's many agency, NGO, international NGO effort on helping governments to close that gap. And then child labor for, to force a child to work online because of the COVID. So that, just for your information, gambling is illegal in Thailand. And, sometimes people are forced, or even a child are forced to sort of work online. And then the last one is, I think I cover everything, covered the 5. Yeah. For the forced labor is forced labor in fishery sector, forced labor in general, forced labor that has the elements of human trafficking, and forced labor that involve international organized criminal, international organized crime, which is like cross border. Yeah.
Okay, and I think I think we're at time. So I just want to take a moment to thank each of our 4 excellent panelists for sharing with us their experiences, and for sharing us their experience with not just the Atlas Project, but with a range of other projects and work that you've done to address these labor and criminal abuses over many years. So with that, I just want to thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much, Maki, for your wonderful moderation. Thank you to our panelists for your wonderful insights and knowledge. I'd also like to thank Kevin and Georgette for their words earlier. And a big thank you to the Atlas team who was able to make this event come together. So thank you to each and every one of you.